All right. Hello and welcome to another Lean In event, Negotiating Your Way Ahead. I am Amrita Agarwal and I'm the events team lead at the Lean In Canada's Vancouver chapter. And I'm really excited to bring this event to you so that we can all gain confidence on how to negotiate our way to top. Thank you so much for joining us today and supporting Lean In throughout these events. We would love to see your beautiful faces during the event, so please turn on the videos if you're able, and we would love that. Thank you. We will begin with Lisa's presentation and then open up the floor for any questions that you all might have. But before we get started, I would really like to encourage you all to become members of our Lean In community, and you can do so by following these really simple steps. Let me show you really quickly. Okay. So you just log onto the website leanincanada.com and then click on this red big button which says become a member. You click here, maybe click twice, and while it loads, just go on here to the form, fill in your information, and then click on become a member. So you'll get all our information on upcoming events and how to sign up for Lean In Circles and everything else that we might share with you. Okay, so without further ado, let's discuss the event. So I'm so happy to introduce Lisa as our speaker for the event today. Lisa is a managing partner with Boyden Global Executive Search, a sophisticated international network of more than 70 offices in 40 countries, including throughout the US. She is also a director of the Canadian board. She brings more than 20 years of consulting experience in a wide range of industries to clients. Lisa has conducted over 200 executive level search assignments, including dozens of CEO level searches. Unique in the sector, she works out of both the Vancouver and Toronto markets. Lisa helps clients build high-performance leadership teams by recruiting outstanding individuals from across the world. Her high-profile assignments include recruiting for the executive team of the 2010 Vancouver Olympic Winter Games. Thank you so much, Lisa, for giving your time and joining us today. Lisa, the floor is all yours.
Okay, thank you. Typically I'd say, can you hear me at the back? But I guess everybody can hear me okay. So we'll assume that everybody's audio is working. So yes, thanks very much for the very nice introduction, Amrita. I'm very pleased to be here. You gave a little bit of a précis to my background, which I think is important for this. I've been in search for almost 25 years, and I was just thinking today, I did the math on that, and I think in that time I've interviewed about 20,000 people. So when I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of clients, for those of you, we're using this term executive search, and I was looking at the list that was sent to me with some of the names of the people participating. And for those that don't know what a search firm is, I thought I'd just take a minute to say what that is. But in executive search, the client is, my client is the company. My client isn't the candidate. So a client comes to me, and my job is to recruit them a new CEO or vice president or executive director into that company. And the ultimate goal, if I do my job right, would be that I would help them build a higher performing leadership team because I've got the right person in part of that team. As I say, my client is the company, but interestingly about my job, I spend most of my day with the dozens and dozens and sometimes hundreds of candidates on every search that I'm on. So tonight I've been asked to speak about negotiating essentially salaries and job offers. I was thinking back, I wish I had taken a course like this. So my goal tonight is twofold. One, I want to make you aware of what you can negotiate. And the second is explain the rules around salary negotiations. There are some unwritten rules that nobody ever explains to you that you might as well have the curtains opened up and know a little bit about tonight. Okay. I understand I'm going to speak until about 10 after 6 BC time, and then we're going to throw it open to questions. So I've seen the questions roll in and they're fantastic. I feel like I could talk forever. and they're really, really good. So I've got a couple of other points I want to make. I'm going to add into what I wanted to say. So this is fine for right now, and Amrita, I'll tell you when to turn the slide. Just job offer negotiations are rarely easy. And if you sort of consider the two main scenarios, one is you're already working and you want to raise for some purpose. The second is you're looking for a job and you don't know as much about that company, and you're negotiating your way into the company. So both situations are different, but emblematic of how kind of nuanced and complex salary negotiations can be. Before we talk about how to negotiate, I want to talk about what you can negotiate. So if you turn to the next slide, Amrita. Oh, then I think, yeah, the elements of an offer. So when we talk, there's some language that we use when we're talking about salaries and negotiating, but we talk about the concept of total compensation. And total compensation is the whole package. It's the whole offer you get. So it's got a salary, it might have a bonus, it's got holidays, it's got a whole bunch of stuff. But your total package is what you should be concerned about, because depending upon the age and stage of where you are in your career, a whole bunch of factors, some of those elements that go into an offer mean more or less to you, depending upon where you are in your career. And sometimes the actual dollars that you are getting are far less important than the other elements of an offer. And so I just want to draw your attention to that. So the elements of an offer that you should be thinking about then, and I'll just quickly run through them. And it's usually in order of an offer when you get your offer. First thing is the start date. You can actually negotiate that. Your title. So sometimes they'll actually go to market saying, I'm looking for a vice president of something. And at the very last moment, the person negotiates, or it's called a director of something, and somebody might negotiate a different title, a better title, a more senior title, because they don't get something else in their element of negotiation. The base salary, a STIP, so that's your short-term incentive plan or your annual bonus. This is the thing you get every year in some companies, not usually in the public sector, not in the not-for-profit sector. In that short-term incentive plan, there's two concepts you need to be aware of. What's the average or the target bonus? What's the maximum bonus you can get if you do a super good job? And is there such a thing as a minimum bonus? We almost guarantee that you get a certain amount, max, the minimum, target, max. You're aware of those concepts. Your long-term incentive plan, this is typically only available to people that are in private sector organizations and publicly traded organizations, where they might get stock, options, equity, and some, my daughter's best friend just took stock in a company and it's going to go public, and she's putting a down payment on a house. So that can be very lucrative if you get it at the right time in your career. Signing bonus. So signing bonus is different from the next word, which is your earned bonus payout. But a signing bonus is, we really, really want you. Sometimes you have a competitive offer and a company will pay you a certain number of dollars just to sign. The second item there is earned bonus payout, and that's sometimes you're in a company, it's November, you've been working there since January, you've done a really good job, you've earned 11/12 of your bonus for the year. The company that wants to recruit you wants you to come and start in December. Super important, really big project we want you to work on. If you start in December, you would lose the bonus you've accrued, the 11 months of that bonus. And so, is that fair? You leave that on the table behind. And so some people ask for their earned bonus payout, okay, or at least a portion of it. Vacation. Vacation is usually the one element that a lot of companies can really give on, and so you can usually get more if you negotiate. Flex days, that comes in different forms. That could be anywhere from work at home to work remotely to work different hours on different days. It comes in all kinds of forms, that we'll call it kind of a flex concept. your pension or RSP contribution, work tools, do you get a computer or a phone, parking or transit. That can also include a car in some organizations, less so these days, but an annual salary review. So you actually write it in your offer, an annual salary review. And sometimes when you're starting, if you don't have a lot to negotiate, you might negotiate a buy-in, like a every 6 months salary review. So you get a double chance in the course of a year to get your salary to lift. Okay. Relocation expenses, that can vary wildly. And there's more at an executive level. So those are the things that we're talking about when we say negotiate. Okay. So over the next couple of examples, all of those have various implications. Okay. So with that, we are going to talk a little bit about the rules of negotiations. So can you turn the slide in, Rita? Yeah, the rules. So I'm going to dive into each of these elements over the next few minutes, and then we can go back if people have very specific questions. Some of your questions are very, very specific. I won't be able to get to them in a general format, but I'm happy to sort of give you the broad concept right now. So as I say, every situation is unique, but there are really some strategies and tactics that apply to most of us most of the time. And these principles really will help, I think, guide you in terms of feeling a bit more confident when you go into your salary negotiation. So the first one is how you show up. Don't underestimate the importance of likability. Okay, this is absolutely crucial. Sounds super basic, but people are only going to fight for you if they like you. And if you're acting like a jerk, they're not going to fight for you. So anything you do in a negotiation that makes you less likable reduces the chance you're going to get something on the other side. So, and I don't mean being polite, but it's about when you think about salary negotiation, there's inevitable tension. You want something and they don't want to give it up. And that's a tense environment for sure. So your job is to ask for what you feel you deserve without seeming greedy, without pointing out deficiencies in an offer, and without seeming petty. And you've got to be kind of like pleasantly persistent, but not a nuisance. It's like a fine line. So a good negotiator can typically avoid these pitfalls by evaluating, like practicing with friends, like how to be pleasantly persistent and not too much. Okay, so likability. Second point is explain why. You need to help the person on the other side of your negotiation understand why you deserve what you're requesting. So it's not enough that they just like you. They need to believe that you're worth what you want. So don't just let your kind of proposal speak for itself. You often need a story to go with it. So if you want a X% higher salary, or you want permission to work at home one day a week, you can't just put that out. It's easier for me to understand if you tell me the story, like explain precisely why it's justified. I had somebody recently say that their children come home, from school early on Fridays, and it's going to be the case until X period of time. Can they have this flexible thing for something on Fridays? Well, the fact I know that, and I know the situation, it's far easier for me to negotiate on their behalf with my client and get that kind of thing. And for you, if there's a story behind it. If you have no justification for a demand, it might be unwise to make it, right? So just think how badly do you need it? The best ammo for this is salary survey data. If you can show somebody else at a similar job or something is earning X and you're not making X, or the person beside you doing the exact same job, that's far more powerful than just saying you want an increase. Okay. Next point is message your interest. Make it clear they can get you if the negotiations will work out, that you're highly motivated for this. Some people, I think, pretend it's so cloak and dagger, and they pretend that they don't really want the job, and they come across almost as disinterested. I think they're trying to be coy as negotiators, but it doesn't really work to their favor. So a client or a potential employer won't expend political or social capital to get approval for your offer unless they know they're going to get you. They're not going to go to their boss or the head of HR or the VP or get something special only to come back and have you say, I've changed my mind. So you need, if you intend to negotiate for a better package, you need to make it clear that you're serious about working. You don't have to say, I'm coming at all costs. You just have to say, assuming this all works out, I'm in. Assuming you can deliver, we're in. Okay. Sometimes you get people who want you by explaining that everybody wants you. So it's easy to say, I might be in another job search, and you can softly message that there's another opportunity you're looking at, that somebody else wants you. You want that to be true, by the way, if that's the case. But the more strongly you play your hand, the more the person on the other side might think that they're not going to get you. So why should they go through the hoops? So it's a little bit of a delicate balance when you do this. The most important thing in all of this is, if you're very interested, your messaging, assuming we can make this all work, I'm in. That's the bottom line on that. Next point is understand the person that you're negotiating with. So companies don't negotiate, people do. And are you talking to the company? Is it your potential boss? Is it somebody from HR that you've got a great relationship? Is it a complete stranger that's shown up and seems to be like all of a sudden negotiating and you've never even met them? The closer the relationship you have with your boss to be, I would say the higher the likelihood you'll get what you want, because they're not professional negotiators. They just want to get you. They'll do a lot to get you. The hired gun that's doing the salary negotiations you've never had a chance with, they usually stick to the script. They have pay bands, all kinds of stuff that they need to keep you in. So it's way harder to negotiate with them. So, or sometimes, so I've said, is it your boss, your potential boss you're negotiating with? Is it somebody in human resources, or is it a third party like me in a search firm? So a lot of people use a search firm specifically because I'm the intermediary between the candidate and the client. And it's in my very best interest to make the deal work. And so I'm very ideally positioned to negotiate. I give very good advice to candidates. That's a crazy request. They will never get that to you. Get that out of your mind. And I can similarly say to a client, you are crazily holding firm on this. It's not standard in the market to do that. You'll never get anybody if you insist on X. So I can give them the benefit of some very good wisdom that helps them put their best offer, to get their best offer forward. So you need to think about who are you talking to, because before you can influence them, you need to actually decide what information they have to give you. Like, are you going to pepper them with questions and they don't know the answers and then they feel a little bit embarrassed? That doesn't actually serve your purpose. As I mentioned, somebody, a HR professional who maybe is, let's say, hiring 10 people, they don't want to break precedent. So the more intel you have on who you're negotiating with, how many roles they're hiring for, is yours a unique role, is it one of 20 or 30, it gives you a little bit of information that you can use to know where you'll probably get some flexibility and where you won't. Next thing is know their constraints. So this person may like you, you might be highly likable and you've made your point, but they may think you deserve, and they may actually think you deserve everything you want, but they still may not give it to you. And why is that? Because they have these ironclad constraints. I saw some of the questions coming in from some of the people in the public sector where there are very firm pay bands. There might be salary caps that no amount of negotiation honestly can loosen. So again, your job is to understand this constraint. Where are they flexible? Where are they not? So if you're talking to a large company that's hiring 20 similar people, they may not be able to give on salary, but they may be very flexible on start dates, vacation times, signing bonuses, etc. Sometimes somebody was saying if they're in a smaller company, sometimes if you're negotiating with a smaller company that's never hired anybody in your role, there may be all kinds of room to adjust the initial salary offer, the job title, often very easily because they don't know what they're doing. So the better you understand their constraints, the more likely it is that you'll be able to propose options that solve both sides of your problem. The next one is be ready for tough questions. So many job candidates have been hit with these difficult questions that they were hoping not to face. Do you have another offer? If I make you an offer tomorrow, are you going to accept it? Are we your top choice? And if you're unprepared, sometimes you say things that are either incorrect, sometimes they're inelegant, and sometimes even untrue because you're trying not to let the cat out of the bag. So my general advice is never, ever lie in a negotiation. It'll always come back to haunt you. But even if it doesn't come back to haunt you, it's unethical. So what you need to do, though, is be prepared for some of these questions. So you want to answer questions honestly without looking weak or defensive or exposing a weakness. And your goal is to do all of that without looking like an unattractive candidate and without giving up too much bargaining power. So before you go into your negotiation, actually think through some of these questions. What are you going to say when they ask this? Often if you're doing a job search and you are looking for a new job outside of your current company, you have been looking around, you have been talking to other companies, you do know a little bit about the market. You don't have to say, I have another offer, but you can, truthfully say, I've been talking to a lot of other companies. I know the salary is below what I'm hearing from other organizations, and that implies that you may have something else. Next topic is consider the whole package. I would say so many people, when it comes to negotiating their job offer, or what I should say is when they think about negotiating their job offer, what that means to them is negotiating the salary. They think of those as one and the same thing, but a lot of your satisfaction from your job comes from factors outside of your salary. And these are often items you can negotiate more readily than salary. So don't get fixated on money. The money will follow you if you're doing a good job. So focus on the value of the entire deal. So, what are the responsibilities in this role? And when you come into this role, could your responsibilities expand if you did a good job? Because usually if your responsibilities expand, your salary will expand. The location. These days, we're all working from home. Some people that are in our office are now in Prince Edward Island and all kinds of places. They're in our Vancouver office, but they live in, as I say, PEI in Ontario, just because COVID has made that possible. So if that's important for them, that's a big perquisite. Travel, flexibility in the work hours, opportunities for growth, perks. There are all kinds of perks that companies have that can be big and small that you may not be aware of. Support for continued education. So think about not just how you're willing to be rewarded, but also when. So you may forgo salary because you really want to do your MBA. You might find out from the organization that they support advanced education and they'll pay up to X%. Well, gosh, that's worth a fair chunk of change if you could actually get that negotiated. So what I'm saying is there's lots of people decide to chart a course that pays them less handsomely now, but puts them in a stronger position later. If you could get advanced education coming into your job right now that positions you for your next job and next promotion, maybe that's worth it. So think about the other elements. This is important, the next one, negotiate all your issues at one time. So you want to negotiate your issues, what we say is simultaneously, not serially. So what this means is that if somebody makes you an offer and you're legitimately concerned about some parts of it, you're usually better off going back to them with all the changes at once. You don't want to say, well, the salary's a bit low, And then could you do something about it? And then the person goes away and they raise your salary. And then say, now, I also want to talk to you about the location. And then the person goes away and tries to do something about that and comes back. And then they say, well, I've got one more thing, and that's X. That drives everybody crazy, and you come across looking very unprofessional. And I would say it might be the tip of the hand not to get the job. So, and the message is, if when you first say, can you fix my or increase the salary, is if I do it, then you'll sign. Like that's the implied give and take and all of that. So if you have more than one request, what you need to do is sort of put them out at the same time. There's a few things I'd like to talk about as it relates to this offer. And I would also say to you that you don't want to necessarily mention them all in a clump, but often some of those items will be more or less important. And you want to signal the importance of them all to you, because this is a deal, right? And so you might have 4 things. I can't start on that date because my sister's getting married. I want more vacation because I've already signed up for the such and such. I hoped I get more salary, and I wish I had such and such. There might be 4 things you're thinking of. You could say to them, at the end, those are the 4 things that are weighing on my mind. I'm sure I could work around. I could change my holiday if I had to. I can't change my sister's wedding, but I really hope to get the salary or whatever. And you sort of say to them that these 2 are most important and these 2 aren't, because that helps the person on the other side say, okay, we're going to keep it the firm start date and the same holidays, but I'll let you go to your sister's wedding. We'll give you that off. Like, they're trying to, most people want to find a way that works. So you need to throw them some bones that they can give back to you, right? Like, where can we horse trade here? Right. So that's, yeah. So what do you want? If there's more than one thing, you want to do it as a bucket. And also, as I say, prioritize them so that the person on the other side knows what you want the most. If you want to say there's 4 things and I don't need all 4, and then they come back and say, okay, you can start at this date, and you miss your sister's wedding, that defeats the purpose. So you need to say that's the most important and let somebody know what the priorities are. Next point is negotiate for purpose and not on principle. I am amazed the number of people, I think they must have just gone to grad school or somewhere, and I think they're thinking, I've got to negotiate just to prove I'm a good negotiator. So resist the temptation to prove you're a great negotiator, because you probably aren't. So, and fighting to get a bit more can just rub people the wrong way, and can frankly limit your ability to negotiate with the company later on in your career. So if you need to negotiate something, do it. If the offer is fantastic, just smile with glee and say, this is absolutely fantastic, and be 100% thrilled, because they'll be thrilled to get you. Okay. Timing, no, I'm not talking about that. Okay. Next one is hang in there. This happened just to me the other day, but I had to say to a candidate, like, they're not out to get you. The fact that you're not getting this offer that you want, this new job is the most important thing in your world, and I get that for sure. We've been talking about this for a long time, but in the eyes of the company that might be trying to solve COVID and buy PPE masks and do 1,000 other things are going to solve the world and the state of COVID in the business, the hire of this person may not be the only thing on their mind. They may have other things on their priority list that they have to do. So just because you don't hear back from a company in short order, don't get in a snit, don't be mad, don't think that you're not getting the job. A delay in getting a job offer might just be simply that you're not the only thing in the hiring manager's life right now. What you need to do, though, is stay in touch and be patient and be pleasantly persistent. So what you don't want to do is be super frustrated and that turns into anger. Clarify the timing. When do they think they'll be able to get this out? Is there anything you can do to expedite the process? These follow-up little emails to the person, super excited to get this offer, keen to hear more about your thoughts on timing. Can I clarify anything for you? These are all important messages that show your continued interest, but you're not blaming them for not getting it to you according to your own timeline. I'd say second last point I wanted to talk about is play the long game and stay at the table. Remember, what's not negotiable today could very well be negotiable tomorrow. So over time, interests and constraints change. When someone says no, what often they're saying is no now. I can't do that now. But a month later, a year later, sometimes all these factors change. I would say one thing I see all the time is certainly for women is they're looking to get more flexibility in their roles. They either want compressed work weeks or reduced work weeks or time off for children. And I would say when a company doesn't know you from Adam, it's hard to just give that away at the very beginning and say, okay, you can have that. I would say almost for sure you go in and prove that you're the best thing in the whole wide world. And honestly, within 6 months or a year, all kinds of accommodation is made for good people. So no is for now, but it's not forever. So look at it the long game and don't give up hope. And then finally, looking at the big picture, maintaining a sense of perspective. This is the final and most important point. And what you want to think about with your career is, I would say to all of you that if you're in the right company and you're in the right kind of function, like you're in a sunrise sector, a job, if you're in employment, diversity and inclusion these days, your career trajectory, does the company have a reputation for promoting people from within, promoting them regularly? Are there day-to-day influences that this company can provide on you? Are you working with a particularly fantastic boss or particularly fantastic coworkers? All of those things are actually vastly more important to the satisfaction of your job. And if you got those items, you're probably going to go to work with a smile on your face and be happier, which is going to make you do better, which is going to make somebody want to pay you more. So it will come back. It will come back in your favor, but it is a bit of a long game. So I got to that pretty quickly, and I think that gets us to just about 10 after to ask some questions. And I do at some point want to talk about how to negotiate, like the actual communication. So I'm happy to talk about that if people have questions about that later, but thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for that amazing presentation. And now we already have a lot of questions from the audience, like a lot. So yeah, we can go through them as well. And if anybody has a question, please feel free to drop them in the chat. Okay, yeah, so I'll start with the first one that we got. And just give me a second. Okay. This is from Hasti, and sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. I often encounter pushback from female decision makers when it comes to salary negotiations rather than males, which is what I was expecting. Do you have any thoughts on why women seem to be more difficult when it comes to salary negotiations versus men?
I feel like that's a whole separate talk. Yeah, and I would say that's maybe not always the case, but I do feel that women negotiate in a different style. I'm putting up this little book here called Talking 9 to 5 by Deborah Tannen, and she's a Harvard PhD researcher, and she talks about how men and women speak differently in the workforce. I got my staff to read it all a couple of years ago. One of the chapters is on negotiations and how men and women negotiate differently. And so if you do have a female boss, you might read that and then adjust your strategy, because if you could imagine both of us being the same, coming on the same, it may not be as effective as male, female.
Okay, thank you so much, Lisa. Okay, so we have another question. How do you come up with a figure when asked what my salary expectation is? So this is for a lot of people who've asked this, and also about resources that they can utilize to sort of get that salary range when they're asked this question.
Mm-hmm. That is the trickiest one, and there's not really like ta-da, a salvo for this that is the actual answer. I would say along the journey of the looking for the job, I would say you should ask as many people as possible, because there might be a recruiter and then a this and then the hiring manager, and each of them might give you a little bit of intel, which when you add it all up actually equals the whole salary that they're talking about. So, what's the, do they have a target range that they're hoping to pay? How senior a person are they looking for? Because sometimes that affects the compensation. Are they looking for a more senior individual with so many years, or a more junior person? Sometimes those kinds of questions on your end allow you to kind of calibrate the compensation. At the end of the day, I would say most of us don't want to take a job for less than where we are. That generally. And so some candidates will say, is there any way you can give me a range with the outer parameters for what the role is you're considering? I don't want to waste your time, as we don't want to spend all this time if in the end it's not going to work out. So some candidates do it very nicely that way. I want to make sure we're in the same ballpark so that it's worth your time with me. Always put it to them that we don't want to waste their time. But I do think the more you can gather earlier on, but ultimately, if they're not going to give anything away, then I sometimes think it's sort of a waste of time on their part. If they're going to be that cloak and dagger about the whole thing, they might be missing out on good people.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for that. So you touched upon this a little bit as well, but Sylvia wants to know how you can defend the point without being aggressive, or without looking aggressive, rather.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's say somebody wants the salary, like you're looking for X salary, and the person's coming back saying, just no, that's all there is to it. Yeah, I think it's just, be the person you want them to be on the other side, right? And when you think of the most professional person you're dealing with in any part of your work environment, there's somebody out there that's a role model in the office you're in right now, and they handle challenging situations very graciously. They take good news graciously, they whatever. And so you could model yourself on somebody like that. I think this whole pleasantly persistent thing, and data drives a lot of decision making. And so if you want more money, you can be pleasantly persistent in terms of, was really hoping that you would maybe get X salary and they're offering X minus 10% or something. And is there some salary information I could share with you, because my salary research has indicated that it's such and such, and so maybe we could calibrate to understand where the differences is. So rather than just say I've got the salary survey and it's right, it might just be, is it right? Let's discuss it. I understand you don't want that now, or it may not. Like, what's the issue for them? Is it their budget, and then that puts them over their budget? Is it philosophical? Is it somebody else that's been there for 100 years is not earning that, and they're actually under market, and so bringing you in, every new person's going to be under market? So trying to get a little bit more information. A good, I'd say, negotiator is trying to get the other side to talk. How did you land at this salary? What's the most important thing for them in this negotiation? Is there some way you feel we could make this work? Are there other, what points of flexibility do you have? Sometimes they have none. And sometimes they do have a little bit, and they can open up their little purse a little bit and say, well, I can give you this if I can get you to do that. Well, the more you can talk about it, the better. But I feel that you want to be, as I say, kind of professional and courteous and kind of elegant about it, right? Because you're gonna be held in higher esteem by them than you are if you're petty and, well, so and so has it and they got it. And a lot of people naively think that just because somebody sitting beside them earns a certain salary that they should too. Maybe that person's twice as good, twice as fast, twice as nice. Who knows? There's different reasons why we all get paid. So just because that person gets it does not at all mean that you should.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Okay, on to the next question. So somebody wants to know, what is the best way to word a negotiation request?
I think that's what I was saying a little bit earlier, which is it sort of depends on what you're asking for. So I think you're ultimately looking for what flexibility do they have with this offer. And sometimes you can say something like, my total compensation right now, with the elements that you've discussed so far, it's not at the level of where I am. And so I'd love to have a more, kind of thoughtful discussion around what flexibility, if any, you have with this offer, because I don't want to waste, I'm super keen to come, but I don't want to waste your time if we can't ultimately get to where we both need to get to. So you're putting out, you want it. Maybe the person hasn't told you everything so far, the elements you've discussed so far. So there's all kinds of little language bits that you can say that open the door for somebody to come back with something a little bit later in the negotiation.
Thank you so much. So we have a question from Shaida, which says, I would love to learn how to value my marketing services as a freelancer, as a full-time employee with benefits, as a full-time independent contractor, no benefits. So how can I maximize my potential income? So I guess pertaining to more freelancers, how do they maximize their income?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm the best qualified to that, because I don't do anything with freelance people at all. I'm full on, fully retained search for full-time jobs. I don't,
Thank you so much.
not pressed to answer that.
So we have another question. So what are some ways to request or negotiate a raise in a not-for-profit environment without, I guess, an existing structure? I know you mentioned a little bit about startups. So what about not-for-profit organizations?
Yeah, I feel like not-for-profit can sometimes be a bit like the public sector, is that sometimes there are very significant constraints for salary around them. And that's just all there is to it. And so I think for some people in not-for-profit, you have to decide that you're okay with that on the salary. I would say I do find generally that some of the other elements of the total package are more flexible. I've got lots of not-for-profit clients who do lots and lots of work in this space. And sometimes I've seen all kinds of accommodation when it comes to flexibility, hours with the job, days of the week. Some not-for-profits do have, defined benefit or defined contribution pension plans, which some people don't think about earlier on in their career, but actually it's an extra 5 or 10% a year that you might otherwise not think about. So there often are little significant benefits with that. I generally I wouldn't counsel somebody to say to go in and get a lot more in a not-for-profit from a salary perspective, because my experience is that they're just too limited. They don't have the flexibility. Every dollar going into your pocket, they have to raise from somebody else.
Thank you so much, and very thoughtful as well. So there's another question. How should I respond when the recruiter or employer asks, so what compensation or range are you expecting?
Mm-hmm. So in my business, we laugh about this because we say you want to ask that question first. As the candidate, you want to say, so what kind of range have you set out for this role? So they have to tell you, because you want them to go first. Some companies will just say, tough beans, we're not going to tell you anything, and you tell us where you are. I would say in the last maybe 2 years, I've had more, I'm not recommending this, but I'm saying I've seen it, for women in financial services saying, I don't want to tell you my salary because of historical inequities in my compensation, as we all know, so I'm not going to tell you. And so they just don't tell you. And there is new legislation in the United States, as you may or may not know, that prevents people like me from asking people their salary. So the other side of that is, in my business, I can't present a candidate to a client and not know what they're earning, because what if they're earning twice as much as our salary range and I waste everybody's time? So it is a very delicate balance. So what are you looking for? If you're in a super, super progressive company, you might have some ability to say, I'd like to see what your range is, because I think I've been underpaid in my whatever current environment. The other side of it is you just say what you want. You know, I'm hoping that some people start broadly. My dream situation, I'd be getting a base salary, a short-term bonus, and then some extra vacation, which blah, blah, I feel I need. And so this is important to me. And so what kind of range are you? So they answer with something, but it's not an exact amount, but they sort of put something out. And then the company comes back and maybe says, well, we're thinking of X or Y or what exact. Sometimes they just grind you. And then you actually have to say something. I would say, rather than saying I need X and just putting out a single amount, sometimes it's wiser to sort of give a range. I'm hoping the total compensation would be in the range of X to Y, and then maybe they can jerry rig how that all works with a base and a bonus and a signing bonus or something like that. So that gives, so maybe the answer is try and avoid saying a specific only figure, try and give a range and try and use that word total compensation. So you might go a smidge higher because they'll probably negotiate you down.
Thank you so much. That's a really good advice for sure. So this is again a specific question, and feel free to answer if it's in your domain. So in regards to a sales role, how to handle when an employer tells you what the base salary is and what you will make commission on your sales. So they're asking like, can you negotiate that or should you not?
Yeah, I would say, so in sales for sure. So often in sales, often sales people in an organization, the salesperson might make the lowest salary of anybody in the business, but they might have the highest bonus structure because salespeople are usually driven to achieve sales, which is why they're in sales. So that's a great example where salary just doesn't reflect at all to any degree what the total compensation should be. I think this person's question you said was, can they negotiate the actual commission structure? Is that what you said? Or the bonus structure?
Yeah, compensation, like each sales that you get.
Yeah. So I think it's sometimes possible. Often, though, they have a commission structure that's baked into the whole company. So they can't change that for you because everybody else turns on that. So if you're in a small little company and it's a startup, yes, maybe there's more likely. If you're in a large organization with a large sales force, I would say probably highly unlikely. I think more important is finding out about my whole thing earlier about what is do they have a minimum threshold? What's the maximum? What's the target? If I achieve X of this, can I get more? Like, how could somebody that's doing a good job, you might say to them, that sounds a bit lower than where I'm working. Can we work out what a typical salary might be? And you do the math together. And you might say, that seems a bit lower than where I am now. Can you help me understand how I get to where I am right now? Oh, well, you get double if the person next door bring something in. Oh, okay, we didn't discuss that. So sometimes just talking it through helps you understand. And I think the other bit is like, how big is that? Or like, are they wedded to that structure? Is what else can a good performer do to increase their remuneration? And you sort of put that on the company and see what they say.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Okay, so regarding your point of you need to have a why you're negotiating your salary. So what if there is no specific need for a higher salary, but just simply believe that you should be making more given how much you contribute? Is there a way to justify that without sounding too confrontational?
Yeah. So can you say that again, Amrita? The question is, could you repeat that, please?
Sure. So what if there is no specific need for a higher salary, but just simply believe that you would be making more given how much you contribute? So is there a way to justify that negotiation without sounding too confrontational?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I used to work at KPMG, and one of the partners gave me some advice really early on in my career because I was saying, oh, I should be making more than this guy beside me because I do 10 times more. And she said to me, does anybody know that? And I thought, I don't know. I thought everybody was just paying attention to my career and following everything I did. And honestly, the light went on about that because I thought nobody has a clue what I do. And she said, Lisa, the best person in charge of your own promotion is you. And so she was pretty good at just helping me come to terms with what I needed to message in the broader work community. And so one answer to that question could be, does your boss actually know? Maybe they have no clue that you're doing all this really great stuff. And so you might want to share that in some mechanism. The other one might be that they know exactly what you're doing and exactly what the other person is doing, and they judge that to be no better. So it's a bit risky saying I'm worth more because they might think, no, you're not. I don't know. So I think partly it's just knowing what your position of strength is coming into that negotiation. I would say though, some people do a nice, if you don't have an annual performance review in your company, you might start your own. I did that in one company. Somebody just gave me that idea. And so I would have an annual performance review. The company never had it. That was not part of their world at all. But I went in and every year I told them how great I was. And this is all the stuff I'm doing and why it's so important and value. So not just, I think it's good, but I'm making the company better because of these activities. This is the value I'm providing. And so that was helpful because I think that person didn't have a clue what I was up to. So there might be different strategies you can employ to increase your worth, your visibility and worth, that therefore the person who's doing the salary negotiations might think more highly because they know what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And that's really powerful. I guess most of the times we don't share what we're doing. So definitely. Thank you so much. So any advice specifically on approaching your company to cover a portion of the cost of a relevant master's degree?
Pardon me, can you say that again?
Sure. So this is a question from Natalie. She says, any advice specifically on approaching your company to cover a portion of the cost of a relevant master's degree?
Yeah. So I would say there are some companies that philosophically are very open to that. They do it all the time. Others that philosophically don't, never do, it'll never happen. And then there might be others that have never considered it. So 3 buckets. What you're trying to convey to them is the value to the company, not you, but to the company of you getting this degree. Because the worry is, I pay for your degree and then you leave us, and then where are we? And so that helped you, thank you very much, but didn't help the company at all. So you're trying to show that balance. I'd say it's pretty common if they do cover a portion of it or all of it, that there's sort of a handcuff in place whereby you have to pay it back if you don't stay a certain length of time. That's very common. And that might be something you offer up. If they were thinking, like if they were hemming and hawing about it, you might say, well, I'd be willing to stay as a thank you or whatever for 3 years or whatever after I'm finished, to make it worth your while, right? I would say, like, I would look around. Has anybody in the company been offered this before? What has somebody been paid? And usually the degree only works if it's absolutely 100% related to the business you're in. It's not some job of the future. So if you're an actuary and you're getting some actuarial course or training, or if you're getting your CFA because you're in corporate finance, usually that for sure. But if you just want to go back and get your MBA because you want to have sort of better general skills, sometimes that can be pretty hard to prove the cause and effect in a whole bunch of businesses. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to add that I'm just trying to follow these comments that are coming in, and somebody made a wise observation that there is lots of salary data out there. It just depends where it comes from. Is it Canada or not? So I'd say, if you could look for salary data for your job, great. The factors that go into what makes somebody's salary, the components that go into it are where is it located? So region of the country. So Canada pays less than the United States. Vancouver pays less than Toronto. So know that. Typically your job also comes to what's called your scope and scale, your span of control. So how many people do you manage? What kind of revenue do you manage? Do you manage the profit and loss of a of a bit, like what are you responsible for? Um, and then your title in terms of, manager, director, vice president. So all those factors go into the actual, what makes the salary survey. I use salary surveys all the time. And so in your job, if you can't get the salary, can you get the title change? And if you can't get the title change, can you have more staff reporting to you by taking on a certain project and being the sort of de facto manager of those? All of those things are very powerful and help you increase your net worth in the business, which will result in your salary increasing.
Thank you so much, Lisa. So our next question is, how do you negotiate from a contract role to a full-time role if you've been offered a position in the same company?
Mm-hmm. So this is a little bit outside my wheelhouse because I'm not doing that, but I would say generally, I'm assuming the person is dissatisfied. I mean, the company, the organization. I would say you would know all the culture fit things. You would know you would fit in the organization, so you would have the upper hand, thinking, "Gosh, I'm going to like it here," which is a lot. Some people don't know that when they go to a new company. And then I think the question would become, often as a contractor, you get other perquisites you don't get as a full-time employee. So as a full-time employee, you get benefits and dental and all kinds of stuff. And as a contractor, you often make more money on an hourly salary basis because you don't get the other 10 to 25%. That's the value of benefits depending upon the company. So I think you just have to go in knowing that your salary could go down because you're getting more benefits. Some of those benefits mean a lot to you, some don't mean anything, but they're still a cost to the company. I'm trying to think of anything sort of specific that this person might be wondering as it relates to the contract, because I sense you would know the job, know the person, know the boss. Mm-hmm. And you might even know some of the people in the area, so have a bit of a sense for what the salary level would be. So maybe just making sure you're aware of those other factors.
Absolutely. And a similar question to that. So how do you negotiate for an internal promotion when they have all of the information on your current compensation and probably more leverage?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the main thing is, do you want do you want the promotion or not? Because usually it's usually a title increase, usually is what you're for sure talking about. Then the question is, do you get more money because of it? I would say the time is now to negotiate. So go in now and negotiate, because it's harder. It's easier when they want you. We're thinking of giving you this promotion. Go in now. You might put something out saying what you're looking for in terms of an increase. Again, the salary data is more helpful if you know this. I'd say generally from a salary perspective, most people when they change jobs at an executive level don't change unless they get a 15% increase in salary. So if I phone you, Amrita, and I say, do you want this job at this company? And it's the exact same salary as you're earning right now, most people say, no, I'm not going to risk leaving and all of this for nothing. So usually I'd say the standard benchmark we use is a 15%. That's sort of an industry average for an executive role. So maybe not necessarily for somebody there, but there'd have to be some increase. I say the only asterisk and change to that would be, are they giving you this massive opportunity to do something super cool and you don't get that much more money because it's this super cool opportunity in a really great company? And I would say to you, I know lots of people that have taken step downs in salary and step downs in job titles and step downs in a whole bunch of stuff for the exposure and experience. We were just saying today, this equity, diversity, and inclusion, you can't buy somebody with this experience. Like, it's impossible, and every single company in the world wants one. So if you could leverage your experience right now and you were interested in that, and somebody gave you the opportunity to go into that field and you really love it, and they were going to train you and you made less or the same, I would say take it, because boy, you're sure going to be a hot commodity in 6 months time. You can go get twice as much money somewhere else. So I think it depends the context.
Absolutely. This will be our second last question given the time. So I'm sure it varies greatly, but do you have any general guidelines on when to ask for a raise or improvement in your total compensation package or title?
When? Like when in the calendar year?
Yeah, so how many years in a role, or assuming you do a good job?
Yeah. Uh, I would say that's an interesting question. That's great. Well, the first thing that goes through my mind is you've got to be there long enough to have made an impact. So you can't just show up and 5 months later be saying, I want a salary increase, because honestly, what have you impacted in the business? I would think that would be too soon. I would think annually you would have a performance, there's a performance review, which is usually different than a salary review, two different concepts. A lot of organizations have an annual salary review. So I think that's completely reasonable.
Okay. So this is one of the last question. I'm just going to choose one in random. So how do you do a counter offer? So I've been offered a raise, but it's with higher hours, so the compensation per hour is not as much as I'd like. So how would they negotiate that?
You've been offered a raise in salary, but the job hours will be more. I think the reality of life is that as you get more and more senior, you have more and more hours, and that's just all there is to it. And in fact, as an executive in a company, that's like completely disproportional, the pay you get for the hours. So I think it depends how much you want the job.
Okay.
Again, it goes back to the whole experience. Like, is this going to be a great opportunity for your career and it takes more time? Sure. Or is it like, not that great, way more hours, and it's not that motivating? That's probably the answer for you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Lisa. So with this, we come to the end of our event. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'd like to thank Lisa for joining us tonight. Thank you so much for being really honest and straightforward with us and helping us sort of figure out what negotiations are and how we can approach them on our own. And I'm sure many of us feel more empowered to start our own negotiating journeys. I'd also like to thank you all for joining us and giving Lean In your time and energy. A recording of today's event will be shared with you all in our post-event email. And please continue to support us and join us for our next event on November 19th, which is on Women and Men Lean In. Thank you so much, everyone. And we'd love to see you on the next one. Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks, Amrita. Thanks, Angela. Bye, everybody. Have a nice evening.